Well, now that we got a little wet in the rain, to start our trip to New Hampshire, it's not great out. The weather could definitely be better, but I'm going to make use of my first day here being a relatively poor weather day. It rained all night, it was windy, not the kind of conditions that you want to spend the day in, but we're going to make best of it by driving around and just doing a little bit of scouting. And after looking around, I might take the camera out a little bit, obviously. Can't help myself because it is still beautiful. The foliage is tremendous here. But I won't take the camera out much. I'm just gonna want to get a sense of what things look like. So I think the idea here is pretty straightforward. The stream has a nice curve to it, and then it's just the trees and the foliage in this mountain here, which looks really mysterious. I don't feel rushed right now because I know that it's going to be cloudy all day, and I know that it's going to be slightly rainy, and I know this fog is going to hang around for some time, so I don't feel rushed doing both the photo and video at the same time. But I think I'm going to need my wide-angle lens for this shot, so like a lens switch, and then see how this looks. I think this is one of those situations where I really got in my own head about the weather. The rain actually helped make this a moodier and more interesting scenario. This first photo I'm really happy with. I'll show you how I made this photo a little bit later on in the video. And then when I made my way back up the rocks and back toward the car, I noticed this vantage point over the overpass along the road and was able to get a photo here, and I really like it. I think it's nice. This was a great start to the trip, and I'm so happy that I was able to commit to going out and getting something here. Well, it was wet, it was cold, but it was nonetheless a really great day to be out in peak foliage in New Hampshire. I'm only here for a few days, and I think it's really important to try and make the most of the time that I have here, regardless of what the conditions are. But really, if you're out and it's raining and you're photographing the foliage, it can still be really great conditions, and I wanted to show you why in some of the photos. But the picture I wanted to work with a real-time edit is this here, and I've got a couple of different options to work with. This, I like the texture in the water but if you zoom in here, this is out of focus. I was going to do a focus stack, but remember when I said I don't have to go fast, I can take my time because the fog isn't going to go anywhere. And I know this fog is gonna hang around for some time, so I don't feel rushed. Well, it didn't go anywhere. It actually started eating up the mountain in the distance, so I had to move quickly, and I ended up getting to this shot here where it's acceptably in focus in the background, and it is still in focus in the foreground. So if I hop into the edit for this photo here, just really quickly here, chromatic aberration, lens correction, okay. This photo's already in pretty good shape. Bring the whites up. Whites, especially in the current here, in the water, that will be good. Bring the blacks down. I want to get that texture between the whites and the blacks. And I want to bring down my highlights because that sky needs to go down a bit. Just if you zoom in here. I like that the mountain is shrouded in a mystery, but there's some good information here, some good color in the foliage that I want to try to bring back. So first thing is just by bringing the highlights down, see if you highlights up, highlights down, bring those highlights down a good bit. Contrast down just a touch, and then increase the exposure just a little bit there. Just make a slight adjustment to the curve, not too much, just a little S curve. So that's before and that's after, before and after. I think that looks good. Okay, the next quick jump is for color. Color with foliage is interesting. I think it's subjective. People obviously love the rich colors of fall. I do think that in the Instagram kind of culture that we have, we've kind of gotten a bit wayward on what colors are supposed to look like. I know I've been guilty of that before, but they certainly they did not look this dull. So I want to increase those colors. So if I go to the area with red, increase the red. I like having it be more of this, there, increase the saturation and the luminance. You don't want to go too high with it because then you start losing the actual information of the leaves. So something like that is probably good. And then the oranges, I like to warm those up too. Saturation comes up, luminance up. Go to the yellow, there's some nice yellow over here to reference. There, and there. And what I'll end up doing is I'll end up having the orange, the warmth in the trees and the leaves, I end up cooling. I'll cool the water down to look more blue. Okay, and then do a 4x5 crop right about there. Okay, so that's coming along nicely. I'll obviously have to clean up the area on the top where I had the spots. And then, like I mentioned, I want to cool the water down in terms of its color. And so, blue, increase the brush. And I'm just going to brush through this area here. So that's cooler, just to get a reference. Before and after, before and after. So this isn't a pretty good place. I'll end up working on this a bit more, but I just wanted to show you that there's really, I don't think when it comes to fall, there's bad conditions. I think as long as you're able to get out and safely photograph, I think you can really make the most out of the time that you have. And for me, I certainly didn't want to let one of 2 full days just go to waste. And so I'm glad I managed to get out. Well, I made it down to Chicora Lake, has a pretty amazing view of Mount Chicora, and about half hour away from sunset, and it looks very nice after a day full of rain and clouds. It's starting to lift. There's already some mist on the water because the temperatures keep dipping down, which is a sign of potentially things to come tomorrow. For me, it's one of the best places to come to this time of year in New Hampshire. It's really, really beautiful. Well, so much for thinking that this was going to be just a scouting day. Another really good reminder to myself that conditions don't have to be what you imagine as ideal to get out and have your camera and take photos. Some of these photos, they're certainly not the best I've ever taken, but it was a really good warm-up, and I did get a few that I liked in particular, including this image, which I got on the drive down to Chicora Lake, just pulling over to the side of the road and getting. But all of this served me well because the next day were the best conditions I would experience on the entire trip, and one of the best photos I've ever gotten during the fall. The light is starting to hit the mountains, and the color is just, it's perfect. This is a perfect conditions, perfect morning. So thanks as always for watching. Tune in next week for day 2 of my fall photography trip. I'll see you then.